Welcome to the Natural Healing Reel. I'm Jackie, and today I have an amazing guest, of course, who is a certified functional medicine practitioner, a coach, chiropractor, speaker, and international author. Her company is dedicated to skyrocketing your health, lifestyle, and mindset. Help me welcome Dr. Pat Boulogne. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for the opportunity to be here and share time with you. I really loved our pre-talk, before we got on. It's just like, I love when you have that immediate synergy.
I know, me too. It's pretty great. I feel pretty grateful for that as well. So this is quite a stack of education that you bring to help healing others in this natural space. Was this a lifetime that you've been doing the functional practicing medicine? Like or were you chiropractor first? How did this whole journey start up for you?
Well, it probably was, I think, at the age of like 4 or 5, I think we played doctor. And at the age of doctor, I was the doctor. And when we played doctor and nurse and patient, I was never the patient. I never died. And I didn't have any patients that died either when I was 4 years old and practicing. And I'm happy to say 40 years later, I still don't have, and I still hold that record. And I've always been interested in science. I've always been interested in, like weird things. I can remember when I was like 9 years old, taking a popsicle out of my mother's freezer, and going outside in 2 feet of snow and trucking down the street, chomping on this popsicle because I wanted to prove that if you made the inside of your body cold, then it wouldn't feel the outside cold. That was like my 9-year-old thought process. And I don't remember getting cold. And I also, like when I used to ski, I used to, someone like, how come you don't? I used hand warmers every once in a while and foot warmers, but I primarily didn't because I always thought that your mind controls your body. So if I could think, heat, then my body would feel heat and it would give it an opportunity to raise to the correct temperature with my clothes on so that it would be the perfect, my body wouldn't be offended by freezing.
Wow.
And I had that just like things that I experimented with. I made, pH scales when I was like 9 years old and submitted them for school and my father was a VP at LA Chemicals at the time in Detroit. And I called him up one day and said, I need phenolphthalein. He goes, that's a big word for someone your age, and I said to him, yeah, but I don't have any in my chemistry kit anymore. And I said, can you bring some home? And he brought me, I can remember this like very lavish type of glass jar with a black stopper in it. And so I had enough phenolphthalein to last me forever, I think. And so and he helped me with my presentation and putting the acid-base indicators. Well, it's one of those big words that you learn then, but I found out later on they used phenolphthalein, which was the acid-base indicator. So the pH talking, and they used to use it as a preservative in beer, and it was just blatantly labeled phenolphthalein. So why would you drink that stuff? And it didn't make any sense to me. And excuse me. And so there was like a whole slew of things, and then I went to, all my classes were science-based. And so it was just like one of those things that I think I graduated and gravitated into it. I used to tape my dog up, poor dog. Used to wrap bandages around it with its one ear covered and the other one still sticking up. But I've always liked to help people. I used to catch bees. I love bees. And I'd release them. I thought I could train them. And my father's only warning was that when you open the jar after you think you're training them, make sure it's pointed away from you.
Right.
Next, I would roll them in the grass when I talk to them and just like, okay, so if you do what, if you get trained, and I said, you can come and visit me anytime you want to. And it was like one of those little kids make believe things, but I thought for sure that I could train bees.
Probably did.
And then I went to college, and everybody in my chemistry class that I studied with, we all became chiropractors at some point in time and at different stages out. So we all used the first person's book because he just passed them on down to each of us. So I had that
question. Did you go in thinking that you would become a chiropractor, or you went in to become a doctor and then found that that was kind of your calling?
I went in to satisfy my father's dream of me going to college. And so, and because when I first told him I wasn't going to go to college, he thought going to downtown Detroit would be a good idea to go have lunch. And so, how he got me to change my mind was that we got off at the exit where the riot started in 67 or 68. I can't remember what year it was now. And then he pulled down the side street and he pulled over to the side and he said, "Get out of the car." And I said, "What do I want to get out of the car for?" And I said, "Here." And he said, "Well, because if you don't go to college, this is where you're going to live."
Oh,
And he said, "So all the money I save for you to go to college, I can buy you a house on the street and you can have probably enough money to live quite a while without worrying." And I said, I just looked at him and I said, "I'll go to the college of your choice." And that just changed the trajectory. Then I took science classes because I liked them. And then I also worked at, I took science classes because I took classes initially in the first 2 years, just classes and electives. I took a psychological genetics class that was a senior level class as an elective, just because I thought it'd be interesting to understand how the brain works and the genetics of that. But the teacher was from China, and it was my first exposure to somebody with a foreign accent. I didn't understand a thing that this guy said at all the whole 13 weeks. But my friend who sat next to me understood him perfectly, and he took perfect notes. So he would take the notes, and then we'd go have coffee after class, and we'd make a copy of his notes, and then he would tell me what his notes meant. And that's how I passed the class. And
that's easy, isn't it?
it was fun. And then even there was another statistics course that I took as an elective because I just like numbers. And so that just led me in the direction. But when I worked as a volunteer and for an independent study at St. Joseph's Hospital, I realized something really drastic was wrong with Western medicine. Is because on a single day that I would be there for 5 hours, and in 5 hours we already had equipment because I worked in the sterilization room that we had to break down and put it into the tanks to be sterilized and autoclaved so they could go on the other side and somebody could put them back together and to make the surgical packets and that. And one day when I was there, we did like 5 open heart surgery packets. And I went, I asked somebody, how can 5 people? And of course, I'm just thinking population. I was thinking this is it's associated with University of Michigan Hospital. How could 5 people have open heart surgery in the same day? Are people that sick? And then the other part of my independent study, I was at the University of Michigan Hospital and I worked as a patient relations advocate. And I walked around the hospital. And the only happy ward was the maternity ward because everyone just had babies and they were really happy, like 90% of them. And then, it's just like I would walk around the other part of the hospital and say, like, "Hey, Jacqueline," I said, "My name's Patricia, and I am doing an independent study and I'm helping the hospital out by finding out, is there anything that you need or you would like me to do for you on your first day in the hospital?" Because people would forget shampoo, they would forget, like, "Oh my God, I forgot to call my mother. How do I make a phone call?" Things like that. So I would just create solutions all day long. And I'm a problem solver. I love to solve problems. It makes me happy.
Yeah.
But I don't want to just solve them and make them complicated. I want to solve them and make them easier. And I want to make them safer. And I want to make them with more simpler solutions so that you can get to your end goals a lot faster. So that's been my why for like my whole life. And I just never realized it, until I did a Simon Sinek like thing. And it just made tons of sense to me. And
Yeah.
I still do that now. I'm doing double duty right now in a doctor's office in near Ithaca. And when I look at some of his patients, I just, it's like, my hand will go like right to this point, and they're going, "Wow, that really hurts." Just like, "How did you know it hurts there?" I said, "I can see it." And they just like, "Okay." I mean, they'd accept that as a fact because I certainly found it, and without, too much palpating. And then I said, like, "But it doesn't need to go." I listen to what your body wants me to do with it, not what the logic tells you to do with it, because where your body wants to put it is in a much safer place than what the logical part of it is, of how you learn a specific technique. And then, the woman at the front desk, she goes, people are like, "Wow, she's really good."
Yeah.
She picks up on stuff like she's very thorough.
Yeah.
Um, And I get that at every office I've ever worked in, when I was covering for a doctor. So all that stuff, that the medicine stuff, has always been there. And I always find that, it's just like some of my answers, or some of the things that when my hands are on people, some of the things, I just see in my head that, or else if I have a difficult time as a chiropractor adjusting something physically, then I will, it's just like I ask them questions. And when, I have clients, I always ask them, there's always a time that they get to an iffy point where, they're starting to feel better, and then something will happen, like something that will pull them back into a trauma that they had. It's usually family related or relationship related. And then we talk about that. And then I'm going, but what is it though? I mean, where do you feel that at? When you think about when your husband gets really irritated with you, where do you feel that on your body? And I said, so yeah, I go, do you know how to put your hand up when someone's coming too close to you for your space? And I said, you can mentally think that, and I said, and even when you're out, if you're in a big city like New York City, you could just put that space out there for yourself, and it's just like, and you can draw really great things to you because the mind's so powerful. And they know that. That's in white paper. That's, in a lot of psychological studies that, some like, well, how do you explain that? Sometimes like, it's just like, I just go, well, why would you want to explain something that's already going on that's good? And there's no necessity sometimes to explain that. But I love the idea of people elevating and igniting their life so that they can get better coaching, they can get better health, they can work better, they can feel better, they can move better, they can have a longevity, and they can have that life being in the limelight of being bestoked. It's called bespoken, or bespoke, and then have that, embracement from the energy that's around them and being in the right place at the right time. We all know what that feels like.
Oh, yeah. Being in the flow is a pretty great thing, isn't it?
Oh, it's lovely.
So, what I hear you saying is like our thoughts are like we're manifesting those all in certain places in our body. So, our relationship, it'll always kind of go to one spot. And I think for me, I get it in my lower belly. My lower belly will ache when I'm working through a conflict. And so I think that if we're not paying attention to that if we're not moving that energy through our body and it's stuck like that, then it can probably really build up and make us sick.
Well, in Chinese medicine, there's three areas. They're called jiaos. It's JIAO. And there's an upper, like your chest area, middle, which is around your waistline, and your lower jaw. And when your lower jaw has a tendency to store things that Chinese say damp heat. You could also have damp cold, but there's dampness in your body when you're starting to feel those things because gravity, I mean, let's say where gravity goes down, it doesn't go up. And so when we eat, there's certain there's certain functions of our body that are supposed to descend, not ascend. It's just like when you eat, it goes to your stomach goes to your small intestine, the large intestine, and eventually, in the toilet. And so when you have, like what you're describing, it's just like in that starting to have that accumulation, what people do when they have emotional stuff going on, they don't digest usually as well as they normally do. And it can be just very subtle. It's just, it can be, it's just like, oh, you're going, all of a sudden I'm craving bread. Like, why are you craving bread? When you don't normally eat it. Comfort food, where does that emotion come from? Where does that sit in you? So,
Yeah.
I just, when I get, I've seen so many different things. I mean, especially when working with trauma and, or like, hitting what I call the upper ceiling syndrome. It's just like you keep on doing the same thing over and over again, and like in your life and your career, and you're not, moving forward in that, idealistic space. And you're going like, why? Why is that happening? And then, it's like, but when you do that and when you have that shift, right? I mean, you're like yourself, right? You just talked about that's where you feel it at is in the lower part of your body. When that releases, it's just like your body feels so calm.
Yeah. And light.
and light. It's just like, and it's, and then you feel like, you're walking on a cloud as opposed to like having bricks around your ankles and thinking, why is it that when I go up the steps, and that kind of thing. But it's very special. And that when I get stressed out, I usually have like a float, like floaters. And I started having that when I studied Chinese medicine and when I was working on my master's. Um, and, I would be studying and all of a sudden, I'd feel, and I'd tell my teacher, and then she'd tell me, you just need to go on vacation. That's what you need to go on another vacation. It's like, no, I don't want to go on vacation. I want it to finish here, because I had many exemptions when I went to Chinese school on the Western side because I already took all those courses, so there's no necessity to repeat them. But the Chinese stuff is really fascinating, to see how things are interrelated, even in Western medicine. All
Wow,
of
good for
it.
you.
It's
That's
fun.
cool. Was that was, so you did your Western medicine and then you went back after and integrated
Well, what I did is I did chiropractic first,
care?
and that's Western medicine without the prescription.
Yeah.
And then it's also the structural part because the osteopaths suggest also. And then then I did other studies like for sports medicine and rehabilitation and nutrition and functional medicine and lifestyle medicine. And when I went back to school to study acupuncture, that was kind of like more of the icing on the cake. And it was incredibly expensive, but it really made me feel like I could tie things together, like Western medicine to Chinese medicine to the chiropractic part of it. It made me realize that the reason why, like in some instances, chiropractic is the better thing to do. Other things it's Chinese medicine, but Chinese medicine works much better doing acupuncture and herbs together. You can really heighten someone's ability to heal by doing those two things together. And then if you add adjusting on top of it, you've got like a magical experience, a lot of times.
Yeah. And I was listening to one of your podcasts and you were talking about just the power of our thoughts and our mindset and just how powerful that is in our life and what's happening with our bodies and what we're attracting. And I just have been really working on that myself. And it's the unconscious stories that are running all of the time that we're not really aware of. That
Like blah, 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 blah in the back of your head. We have three brains. And so if you understand the three brains, and then when they start talking, then you can shut them off, so you can have more command of them. So in the primitive brain is the fight or flight, it's the like stop on the brakes and when the car pulls in front of you. It's that type of thing. Or it's that second sense when you're going down the street and you're thinking like, I should turn. I should cross the street, and you don't know why you're doing it. You're just doing it, and or, I was in Key West one time and we were in some place that's very cool bar that was like right on Duval Street. And we were sitting in the corner and I saw this gas truck pull up and I just said, let's get out of here. Let's we need to get out of here. And so the guy who was showing us around, chiropractor who practiced there, you know, our bill was already paid anyway. And so we got up, we got in the car, drove a block, made a left-hand turn, made another left-hand turn because we were going to go to the waterfront. And all of a sudden we heard this big boom. And the gas truck that was putting propane in the place blew up the whole side of the building,
wow.
and where it blew up at was right where we were sitting, and I just went like, thank you. And I didn't find out about, I heard it, but he just said, oh, he goes, that's just probably one of the jets, from the like the Air Force base that's here, like a sonic boom, but it wasn't. And it was really like, this whole like I'm thinking, oh my God, I was sitting here just before that, that came. And so I'm always going like, I am grateful, and for sure. And I'm very grateful for my intuition. And when I don't listen to it, I'm always going, sorry. I go, you think after 70 years, I would listen to my intuition better even now, but it's not always happened. But the
Yeah.
three brain thing's very cool because that The primitive brain, the lizard brain's talking and saying, you can't do it. And where the lizard brain gets its information from, because it can't store information, it's stored in the mammalian brain. Mammalian brain stores everything that's ever happened to you, like every bad choice you made, every good choice you have. But the lizard brain focuses on the bad ones. That guy, oh, this guy's so much fun. It's just like, and you're going like, reminds me of somebody. I just can't put my finger on it. And so, wow, and then the mammalian brain also stores all the good stuff. It's where all the magic happens in marketing because they take someone who has that pain point, you keep on dating the wrong guys, it's like, or you keep on making bad choices. So, it's just like, and then you do something good on your conscious brain, and the conscious brain dumps in the good information. The lizard brain's always trying to bring up the bad, and you can tell the lizard brain to shut up, get off my body, get out of my sphere, and you can start dumping more positive experiences so that when you meet somebody who's really wonderful and nice, you're going, wow, what a nice guy that is. And then it's like I meet, people say affirmations. Well, how you really do affirmations that really are potent for you is you definitely have to put them in first person. So it's like, I am healthy, I am vital, I am active, successful human being. On this day, I give myself unselfishly to help others elevate and ignite their lives. I say something like that every day. And so the question though is, it's not just enough to do that. The second part is, why is it that I'm healthy, and the mammalian brain's got to go find out why, because it can't stand not knowing. It's like,
Oh,
oh, you're healthy because you do a Mediterranean diet. You're healthy because you drink water and vinegar. You're healthy, because thinking that someone goes, oh, I could never drink that. And I said, yes, you can. It's a decision, and it's just like, you want to sleep better? It's just like, you want to sleep through the night? It's just like do certain things in order to get there. There's a combination that I help people with that I teach with the vinegar and the water that helps them get to a certain point so that they can sleep through, like, sleep through the night, digest their food better and things like that. It's pretty cool.
vinegar.
And water. It's just like I did a challenge for myself. I kept on listening to somebody say something about it all the time. And I just went, what? I'm just going to go do it. I wasn't ready for to do it before. And so I started doing it. And I had 3 12-ounce glasses of water with 2 tablespoons of vinegar in it.
And you have that throughout the day?
And I just like downed it, and just went on because I didn't have time. So, a type A personality. And so I drank that. And so that was the first month. And what I noticed in the first month is I started to get a waistline without doing anything else.
And
I
is it
started
apple
sleeping.
cider vinegar?
Oh, I'm sure it's the only thing that's changed. I
Um,
I did, I said I started sleeping through the whole night, and it's just like, I did that occasionally, but like, and if I woke up to go to the bathroom, then I would come back in my room, I'd lay down and I'd go right back to sleep,
Wow. I'm
and
gonna
so
get out the water and the vinegar.
water and vinegar, it
I don't
works
think I've
like
slept through the night
I
for,
can
I don't
feel
know,
my
quite a few
ribs.
years now.
I can feel my ribs. And so,
Fine.
and then I don't, like if I eat something that, use this to help you digest your food better, you can use lemon and water too for that purpose. But there's that, going back to the brain, it's just like I tell my brain what we're doing. My brain doesn't tell me what we're doing. And so having that command of like how to talk to yourself eliminates a lot of the chatter, and it's just,
Really, that's really important information and it's very simple, but like, I think we're just walking around not aware, and where things are just happening to us. And I think just that little bit of information of knowing that, we can just take charge by just
oh,
self-talk
well,
and proper questions.
here's a slight pro bono. You're thinking negative thought, right? So sometimes we do that, and you think that son of a da da da, right? And you're going like, what the heck did I just say that for? And just like, stop, freeze, it's just like cancel, any of those words, whatever your word wants to be. And then you do that. And then what you need to do is pivot physically and walk in a different direction. So
Yeah.
they do it in dog training. So when you're walking your dog and your dog's going wacko and it's going to eat the next person coming down the street, you just tug back on the leash. You don't choke. And when you tug back on the leash, you change your direction and walk in a different direction to change the attention. You can do the same thing to your body when you're having one of those moments. It's just thinking, someone goes like, why is it every time I'm in your car with you, we always get front door parking? And I said, well, I do that as long as there's some place to park. And I said, but I would rather walk in and get the better exercise. So if I can find something cool where no one's going to hit my car, the side open, bang their doors, I said, I'll do that. Other than that, I'll go find the farthest place in the world, like away from that. And I just make it okay. I mean, nothing's the end of the world. Everything's subject to change. That's what I learned from my mentor. He said to me, I had no clue what he was talking about. Everything's subject to change. And when we go on a trip, and all of a sudden you can't get on your flight, doesn't mean that, maybe being late for your flight or maybe the flight being canceled saved your life.
Right.
And if you think from that positive aspect, the woman in the office, she said, "You're so positive." She was not positive. And I said, well, you can't be. I said, it's a choice. Happiness is a choice, and I said, so you can just like someone says something that offends you, you're thinking, you can't be offended if you don't take offense,
Yeah.
right? And so it's just that having, and having some Chinese doctor in Boston that I went to go see. I almost fell off the table when I was putting my shoes on because he said to me, Patricia, you have such a great, strong character. And I said, oh, thank you. And I'm thinking, where's he going with this one? And underneath my breath, I'm thinking this. And he said, you should have a baby. And I just sat back like this. I said, do you know something I don't? And he just said, and he goes, no, no. He goes, I think you should adopt, and he said, because you're not, he said, you're not the kind of person to have a baby. I said, no, I had them all the time for 10 years. They're called patients. And, and it's just like I worked and I just like, I didn't have, when I came home, I wanted nothing. I didn't want to talk, and I just wanted my own quiet space. I didn't listen to music. I just listened to quiet. And so it was interesting to, like just thinking of like some of those concepts. And, and also we talked a little bit just before we started. It's like, oh, so when I have a cold, I don't think of having a cold as being sick. As soon as you say you're sick, your body's going, oh my God, she's sick, she's sick, she's sick, she's sick. What do I got to do? Oh my God, I got to send like lymphocytes. I got to send the neutrophils over here. I got to do this, to help that give it. And you got to create mucus because you want the mucus to get the microbes so they, you can eventually get them out of your system or cough them up. I think of, having a cold, it's like, wow, I'm so glad my body's functioning the way that it was made to function because it's supposed to recognize foreign invaders, and it could be a microbe, it could be fungus, it could be, a virus. And, it's just like, so when it can recognize it, your body's functioning. If I had so many other things going on, that's when you start seeing people struggling when they get the flu and struggling when they get other things. It's like, how'd they get that anyway? What's the source of it? Why, and what's the solution? So by eating well, thinking good thoughts, and eating clean, you give your body and your life an opportunity to elevate all by itself without a lot of hassle. You
Yeah.
just got to make good choices. And if you don't know how to make good choices, or you're thinking like I could use some help in that so I can understand what a good choice is and what a bad choice isn't, it's like, then you would like, you want to learn that. I had a client one time who we worked 3 months together, and a friend of hers, she said, I wanted to go on vacation so bad. So her friend called her up one day. She says, I have an extra ticket to go to Costa Rica. And she said, and so she called me up and said, do you think I can have a drink when I'm in Costa Rica? And I said, well, and I said, you can have anything you want in Costa Rica. You can have the experience. And I go, or I said, but if you're intoxicated, you're not going to remember the experience. So, and also you have to think of how much money you invested in your health already. Do you want to start all over again?
Right.
And she said, no. And I said, so maybe, you can get high on life down there, better air, like monkeys, and snakes and those kind of things. It's the stuff that you would love to see, and you can go hiking. You love to hike, and I said, you do not want to hike if you've been drinking. I can guarantee you that, and it's just like, so go and hug a tree every day, and she sent me a picture that she was 54 at the time. She sent me a picture that's like this, and that she doesn't look a day over 30. I mean, she looks so in her element. I said, you should go, and her skin was a lot better, and she just had, she just shed a lot of like crap before we got that far, like not only just, in her body, but also mentally. So her mental well-being was solid. Nobody was going to knock that lady over ever again, and it was so great to see that picture. I'm going, that's what you want all the time. And now you can have it. You don't have to walk around like this. It's just, but you can have it. And you're that assurity, is your effervescent energy around you. Because we all know people have got energy. So when you walk up to some people and they shake your hand, you're thinking, I need to go home and take a shower. And other people, when they shake your hand, you want to hug and kiss them. It's like, I just really like you, and but why is that, And so we need to pick all our lifestyle choices very carefully from the people, from, the events that we had. If we had an event in the past, so what? It's just like, it's what you do with that. What did you learn from that? And how can you take that information so that you can go forward? And then you can go forward, you can eat better, you can think better, you can move better, you can live in longevity. It's just like, who wants to not live, have longevity, and do it well? I mean, it doesn't make sense. Like, oh, I don't, it's just like, who doesn't want that? I mean, it's want to have that so that you can have that joie, and you can have that on a daily basis. You can find something every day to be happy about, no matter what. I guarantee you.
Yeah, I think it's just becoming aware and deciding
Mhm.
that, that you want to shift.
Yep. Well, if you can't, so I said, if you're so decisive, call me. That's like, we'll clear that part of it out. But you're right. It's awareness is crucial. I mean, my book, Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired, is a book of questions that tells people where to start their health journey. And the biggest thing that I've been told again and again and again and again is that what it does is it promotes and increases your awareness about your own health. Because you can't get better hoping, you have to get better doing. And the doing starts inside, so health is an inside out job. And then you have to have the other aspect of that,
Yeah.
by what you eat.
Right.
It's
That's the
so
big
cool.
one, right?
It's
Like we're in this fast food, everything's processed. There's so
Mhm.
much crap in our food that we're buying that we're believing is healthy. And it's, yeah, I think it's something that you almost have to focus on, right? Like you have to make that decision. And then for myself, anyways, and then really walk that path because it's easy to just, pick up the garbage food when you're hungry and tired and then it's worse, right?
Mhm.
Sugar and
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Little bit of a sugaraholic here. That's something that I really need to focus on myself. And yeah.
Well, if you are craving sugar, the best thing for you to eat is to eat a protein.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. And why
You
would
know,
that?
it cuts your sugar craving, and also when you eat fruit goes to your liver to be dealt with, not your stomach. So it bypasses it. So it puts a lot of stress on the liver, if you eat a lot of fruit. So the thing of five, servings of fruit or vegetables, it should be 5 servings of vegetables and an occasional serving of fruit.
Right. Interesting, hey? Because people wouldn't know that. They're just eating all of their fruits, believing that that's really
Right.
super healthy. And too much of it is not a good thing. It's overloading the liver.
Mhm. It's overloading the liver. Before you have diabetes, you have a fatty liver. And if you have a lot of fructose, it promotes your liver, the fat in your liver goes, the numbers go sky high. So
Interesting.
it's just like, I always tell people when I work with them in the first month or two that I work with them, I tell them not to eat fruit at all, and to just eat vegetables because it says fruit or vegetables.
Mm,
And or and if there's a there's a timing, that sequence that comes up that seems like it is, it's like, okay, well, what about blueberries? Well, blueberries are great, but it's only like a cup serving of blueberries, or half a cup serving. It's not, like the whole carton.
Right. That's interesting. I think that as a society, we believe that, more of that is better, you know,
Right.
and it's not. More of everything is not
It's,
better.
and then also, when you drink enough water, you're not like, if you're hungry, if you have, because when you have a sugar craving, you got to go like, what's happening? My blood glucose, you know, water and vinegar, drink, a little bit of water, drink a half a cup or a cup of water, and then go back to it and see, am I still hungry? And a lot of times won't be the case. And also intermittent fasting is a good thing to do.
Yeah, that's got a lot of press lately. A lot of people are doing the it's the word's not coming out of my mouth. Intermittent fasting. So it's like a 16-hour where you're fasting and then you're eating the other part of the day. Like it's a short, like within those.
Well, do 16 hours because I go from about 8 o'clock at night to 1 o'clock.
Okay.
The next day. And so the first thing I do though, like in intermittent fasting, you've got to drink enough water, or else it won't. And then there's like, and I put lemon juice in my water. I want my water, I don't need to have water flavored, but it, tricks the brain into thinking that you're doing something, you're, it tricks the brain to like function better, in that regard. Like is if you eat, then you break the fast. That's what breakfast is all about, but it isn't necessary to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Right.
And you just got to give your digestive tract an opportunity to rest, repair, and revitalize. And the only way that you're really going to be able to do that is is if you can do it on intermittent fasting. It's an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
You
I,
know,
one of the guys that we were working with, he's a producer on one of the shows that we were working on, and he had like a major heart surgery and said that he changed his whole body, lost all of this weight, and his health was phenomenal. And that's what he was doing. And
mhm.
pretty powerful, apparently.
I just want people not to create crisis for themselves, So it's just like a lot of people have crisis, they don't do anything until they're in a crisis and they don't pay attention to the subtle signs. I mean, like we had, when we had I want to think of a better idea for you. When we had, oh, I just lost my train of thought.
Goodness, I'm glad that
Well,
that happens to other people.
I'm like, oh no, it's just like, well, I've got somebody walking at the front door and I'm hoping that they don't come in the front door, so I'm a little distracted by that,
Got it.
and, but at any rate, it's a kind of a very friendly neighborhood. It's just like, hey, hi, what are you doing? I'm on a podcast. And, but at any rate, what was that question? I'm sorry. Let's go back to that.
Do you know what? I'm not, yeah, I'm with you. I just went right past it too. So we were talking about intermittent fasting and
Yes.
yeah,
Okay. So the intermittent fasting part is like, I think intermittent fasting is important. If you want to lose weight, it's a great way to do it without stressing your body. And intermittent fasting doesn't stress you. If you have a medical condition, you should always connect with your doctor before you do that or your healthcare practitioner to see what they think and then research it. And then the other part about intermittent fasting is like, when you pare it down to like 2 meals, then it's just like, and if you eat the right kind of foods, if you don't eat the right kind of food, you're going to be hungry an hour and a half after. That's how you ate the wrong food.
okay.
So if you are hungry after eat like an hour and a half later, you're going like, oh man, I am still hungry. Something just didn't get that point, I don't feel satiated. Then you ate the wrong food. And you've got to figure out, when you do like a diary like that, you want to take a look at what the cycle is and what is that food. And intuitively, you'll know when you look at it.
Yeah.
It's just like, what is it on this list that is not, that is my nemesis that's on there. Some people think avocados are great for you, but I know a woman who ate avocados because she loved them and they couldn't figure out why she was bleeding from her intestinal tract. And so 10 years they treated it. Sometimes it would get better, sometimes it wouldn't. They would go do her colonoscopy and they finally said, we're going to have to cut it out, And so she said, well, can I play with my kids? Can I go swimming? No, no. And so she just said, I'm not doing it. And she went out and found an alternative doctor who did, testing for food sensitivities via blood and for IgGs and IgGs. And she found out her worst offender was avocado. And she
Wow.
decided, she's like, oh my God, I never thought avocado was bad for me. But it kind of tells you that it steers you in the correct direction of how to start thinking about food. Because if I knew that when I eat avocados, my intestinal tract bled, I wouldn't eat them. It's like
Absolutely.
asking people if you knew what to do to be healthy, would you do it? When someone says no to me, I just went like, what planet are you on?
But like
Why wouldn't you think?
avocados, those are supposed to be like one of the best foods for you, right?
It's a monosaturated thing. You never want to bake them and you never want to fry them. You want to eat them raw, is the only way to have them. So when you're cooking with avocado oil, there's a smoke point, it's just like I don't buy avocado oil, and it's just like, there's a shortage of olive oil right now. I'm going, is that manufactured? Like why is that? And so there's a lot of things that you're looking at them, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but when I'm looking at them, it's just like, well, why is this happening right now at this time? Why is there a shortage of this or a shortage of that? Why is that? Who's benefiting from it? You always got to follow the money. And if it's like if it makes all sense, then great, but if it doesn't make sense, you've got to ask questions. You have to challenge the norm from that, or else you become part of the new norm,
Yeah.
and you don't realize that you don't really want to become part of the new norm because then when you go to get health care, you don't get the right thing. If you ask the wrong question, you're going to get the wrong answer. So you want to advocate for yourself and do the research so you ask the right question, so you get the right answer, so you can make an educated decision about what you want to do with your life, your health, your wellness, and your mindset and your well-being. That then you've got all the tools. So when you make a decision, you're making it from, like the right side, left side, and then you can go like, wow, it's not just the intuitive part of that has to come into play, especially when, you're like dealing with the typical Western medicine front, or a doctor who's like, advocating for that type of thing, whether they're a naturopathic doctor or, whether they're, medical doctor, chiropractor, acupuncturist, it doesn't matter, but you always got to get your information straight so that you can make a better decision.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in this day, it's gotten so complicated because I think like our mainstream, um, we've always followed and not questioned. And then we've come into a time where that's not working anymore. We're not balancing our bodies properly with the body, mind, emotions, all of that, right? It's, yeah, the medication and the mainstream of just doing what you're told. You've got cancer, so now you take the chemo, and we just go along and we just do what we're told. And boy, oh boy, it's really, I think we're all really learning that is really needing to be
Well,
looked at.
if you go back to, the even the like the Twin Towers as an example, all those people in the towers, what they were told is to stay put. If I was on the 70th floor and something's burning around me, the last thing I would do is stay put, and and so that was for me very, I heard that, I'm just going, how tragic is that? It's like, and plus they believe them, you know. And it's like, you got to figure out how to, to like use your brain and also make good decisions so that, it's got to make sense. If it doesn't make sense, even if it's the slightest cross in your mind going like, wow, how does that really work? And is
Yeah.
that person really listening to themselves talk? Is that possible? Could even be on the radar of somebody? Those are like my, questions when, I listen to people. And even during, all those hard times that we had, It's just like there's some things that just never made sense to me, and I just never was able to buy. But at any rate, I take that wisdom that I have for over practicing close to 40 years, and I share it. And I love to share it like on podcasts. I love to share it with people that I just meet on the street and just say, that mixology part of my brain. My ancestor was an apothecary in the 1600s, and his son was an apothecary in Quebec City. And it's just like my girlfriend just said one day, your DNA doesn't change. And I said, I'm so glad, for that part of it. But you can,
Definitely came in like this, didn't you? Right from being little, right? Like you're just walking to a whole different drum. That's awesome.
and so you just, and you see things, and you do things like, I'm looking to see if I have some, here they are. Normally, like as soon as I get into a different light or when I drive with these glasses on, and they're great because my eyes don't get tired, especially if I'm driving a long distance or if
Yeah,
I'm on the computer and my eyes start to get tired because that electricity and energy is like draining, and your eyes are an entry level into your body. It's just like your optic nerves are just like right behind your eyes. Their nerves are right there. And
that's
it's
your
like
nervous system, right? They're part of your nervous system, isn't it? Yeah,
And it's also like eyes are in Chinese medicine relate to the liver and to kidneys. So if you're seeing floaters,
yeah,
I didn't have them when I was 29. It's just like when, I started getting them when I was like 55, 60, something like that.
yeah.
So I know what the clear ones mean. I know what the dark ones mean,
And what
so
do
it's
they
just
mean?
like,
What
hmm?
do the dark ones mean?
Dark ones relate back to kidney function, because it's always related to water and the color in Chinese medicine for kidney is, basically black, and the liver is clear, so it's just like, are you digesting your fats and your fats floating around? I mean, sometimes that's what when you're looking at what a floater really is. Chinese
Yeah,
also think you get them because of stagnation. So there's a circulation type thing that's going on. There's a lot of wow, talk about data dumping. I have to be very careful, because I've had people, I was like, wow, how long have you had a hial hernia? They go, a long time, but I didn't come here today for a hial hernia. I said, but you would go, but you should get it treated today. So, you don't want to let that sit, and not take care of it when it's present, and it's just like, why would you do that?
right,
And it's just like, I had somebody tell me that one day, about 3 or 4, like 2 months ago, something like that. And I looked at him, I said, are you serious? If you got an opportunity to be treated by that and by somebody who knows what they're doing and how to treat it, I go, why would you say no? I mean, it
right.
just didn't even cross my mind that it was like, wow. It was one of those wow moments in practice where I'm like, great,
They probably
great.
just don't get it. They
Yeah,
probably just don't get that coming up right here. And I'm
have
seeing
a
it
great,
because you need to have that looked at, right?
go have a great day. Good luck. And but there's some people just, like some people love them to death, but it's just like you can't. I always say that I always charge my family and friends 3 times what I charge a normal client. And someone goes, wow, why do you do that? Because they don't listen to you. Do you ever notice that? You're like when you're, and I always ask, is it a good time to give you advice and talk about this? And they'll go, oh yeah. And then when you start talking, they don't want to really hear it. And just say like, okay, great, we won't talk about it. Like, no, I want to know. I said, no, you don't. I said, let me know what you do. And then I said, when we do, I said, I go, make sure that you have a credit card out because I says like I stopped, just see a lot of people who want information, they're shoppers, but they're not willing to buy, and a lot of people I work with really want to be healthy, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to get there. Climb a mountain, ain't no valley low enough, ain't no mountain high enough, to keep me from my level of health. I mean, it's just like, I know it's not exactly how that song goes, but you get the idea.
Well, I just think that right now in this time that we're living in, it's just so intense. The energies are so intense. There's so much fear. There's so much going on. There's so much contrast within family and friends and, what one person thinks, what somebody else thinks. It's just, I don't know. I think that it's really, really a gift that you are sharing your knowledge about the awareness of you just do this, this, and this, like have a look at it, make a decision, right? Those kind of information, it's simple, but it's so important because I don't think that that is what's on the forefront of our mind, that we can just take charge
Right.
by shifting ourselves or looking at ourselves and choosing, to make those decisions. I think sometimes we just get so far down with things that are bogged us, that are bogging down, whether it be emotional or
Well, for
physical.
sure. And look at what, when someone's like, they're going, I'm not having a good day. All you got to do is pretend you're training a dog and turn a different direction.
Yeah, pivot.
It takes that long, and, it's just like, it takes practice, but it takes that long to like, change your trajectory, so that you can, have more peace of mind.
But
You know,
just to know that though, this is all you need to do. Just make a decision, just decide, right? Today, I feel like,
decide.
yeah, I can
Can't
reach
sleep at
in.
night. Ask yourself if there's anything you can do about what's bothering you. Figure out what's bothering you. Say, what's really bothering me? Is there anything I can do about it right now? Well, then get up and do it.
Yeah.
And then go and then give yourself permission to go to sleep. If you can't figure it out, then it's just like then dictate it and give yourself permission to go to sleep because it's going to be there in the morning when you get up. It's not going anyplace, and then you can address it then in a more like environmentally friendly way.
Yeah.
And then when you get up, I mean, there's a technique that I learned from, I remember it was Jose Silva or somebody like that, where you just take, your glass of water and you drink half of it. And while you're drinking it, you're going, this is all I have to do to solve the problem I have in mind. You don't even have to know the problem that you have in mind. Just do it and just say that to yourself. Be consistent. And when you get up in the morning, drink the other part of it and you just say, this is all I have to do to solve the problem I have in mind. It's absolutely liberating. It's just a simple thing to do. It doesn't cost you anything. Make sure you're drinking good water though. And then, you drink the water and it's just like, and then you get on with it, and then you can say your affirmations, and then in your affirmations, these are really great tips in your affirmation with, it's just like, why is it, that I'm successful? It's just like because I'm dedicated. I love to help people. I love to see people enjoy their life. I like to see people live unapologetically. And there's no reason in God's green earth anybody can't do that. And that gives me the pleasure. That's why I say happy birthday to everybody. I do that. And like I say, and people, I've done it so long. People are like, hey, what did you do for your birthday this year? Because I always look for like something different to do, and it's just like, you've got so many years. Like, why would you do the same thing over and over again? It's just like, and it might be feel great. If it feels right, do it, but you're thinking like, oh, I need an adventure. And like, where should I do for my birthday this year? Like, oh, I'll go to the Upper West Side in New York when I turn 50. And I found a hotel that had a roof deck. And it was in a really cool location because it out the back was on 77th and Broadway. And out the back was the Dakota, and where John Lennon lived in Yoko, and you had like, it had that kind of like ambiance, like being there, and not at the time that, it was long after he was murdered. But and then the other direction was the George Washington Bridge, which is beautiful at night. I don't like going over it, but it's pretty to look at, And I was in an Adirondack chair and a half a bottle of champagne, and I was by myself, and it was like just the momentum. It's just like I had such a great day, and it was such a great moment, And I had, it was just I can't tell you. It's just I didn't wish for anything. I didn't like, I just sat there and just absorbed the input from it. And we all know the movie, or we don't maybe know the movie. Oh, okay. There's a little robot, and the robot came to life. And when it came to life, they turned him on. He could feel human feelings, and he was a learner. So, and there's Short Circuit is what it's called.
Okay,
And then
yeah.
Short Circuit 2, he's in New York City, and he bust out of this building. They wanted him to stay there, and they thought he was going to be able to just stay back. And these guys like think broke into the warehouse, and then he started going, hi, I'm Short Circuit or whatever they called him. And And he goes, "Do you need any help with anything?" And they go, "Yeah, we wanted to, like, we can't get the keys out of our car up here. Can you help us open the car doors?" And he said, "Sure." He walked out in the middle of the street and went, "Choo," and all the, doors were unlocking like this, and these guys were having a field. And he left. And then he got arrested. The robot. But when he first went out and he saw New York, he just put his like short little, like robot arms up and went input, input. It's like ET home, input. And it's just like, and that's how we get information and acknowledge. You could feel the energy. Words have energy. Everything around us has energy.
Yeah.
Energy can't be created or destroyed. And it's just different molecules. The molecule of a dog, and how they all fit in, the molecules of us are similar in some ways. And then, and not like, everything, the table I'm sitting at, the table has its own molecular configuration that makes it a table. And
Yeah.
that. So we have just, it's like everything's energy, everything's positive or negative or, or neutrally charged. So that's how you get like, the valences in chemistry. They have eight, like on oxygen, there's eight spaces for something to connect to. So H2O2, right? It's H2, two hydrogens to one oxygen, and then you can attach, another molecule to it that has the space for it and make something like, hydrogen peroxide.
Yeah.
And what happens to hydrogen peroxide when you put it in water? Well, the oxygen, it breaks off. There's no harm in that, when you have that breakage of that. It's just like one little thing I remember from chemistry.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, where did it's like come from? But I just think of like how things in the universe all fit together in a particular fashion. And if you change positive direction, you will go in a positive direction.
Yeah.
Some
That's
and
pretty
some people
powerful.
just need more practice than others. It's just like I can remember when I was one of those people. So, and
I love that the questions that you ask also are very positive questions. They're not like, why is this happening to me? It's,
Mhm,
why am I successful today? Why is my health so great now? Those kind of
mhm,
questions, that's, I think, something that wouldn't be like a natural narrative.
mhm. Well, it's a good narrative to, like if there's it's called a specific it's a specific system that they use in psychology, but to sum it up, it's just it's you say your affirmation, for instance, it's like, well, why is it that, I drink wine vinegar? It's just like, and it's like, why does it make me feel so good? Like I love drinking and hydrating. And it's just like, so why is that so good for me? It's just like, and then my brain goes like the robotic part of my brain goes like, oh, the screen goes up and it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. I feel like Chat GPT. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like how many things can I come up with?
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So if what are you doing for people to connect to you? Like, you're coaching and like what is the best space if somebody wants to connect with you and get some.
Well, one thing is to figure out where somebody's at. 'Cause sometimes people don't know where they're at. So I have an introductory like discovery call that people can do, and they can grab that on my website, and it's on the Work With Me page. And so and there's a lot of ways to do it, but on my Work With Me page, there's a discovery call, just to have a conversation. There's no charge for it, it's complimentary. People can connect with me. I, coach, and I've worked with athletes, and like Boston Marathon runners, and also like Kenyan runners. I used to see them at the Falmouth Road Race on Cape Cod. So, a good way to connect with me is through LinkedIn, which is directly how my name appears. I'm sure there'll be in show notes. It's on Dr. Pat Boulogne. So it's just like you can ask thing. And just connect. It's a great way to like, like take a look at like what are the possibilities? Because I'm always looking at like, what's the possibility? You've got a problem, let's create a solution. And what kind of solution do you want? And where do you want to go? There's always something you can do, no matter what situation that you're in. Always.
Yeah, I think that having that support and having, that access to somebody like yourself with that kind of education and knowledge and just the lifetime of experience that you've had is totally invaluable. So,
Yes. I also like to laugh. I mean, it's just like we don't laugh enough, and there's about a year that, one day I just was having a conversation with a friend, and she and he don't laugh enough. Do you When's the last time you guys laughed so hard that you cried?
Right?
And so she goes, well, I don't remember. And they kind of just like, I don't think we laugh anymore. Do we laugh anymore, honey? I think I need to leave now. I'm not gonna, I don't want to pop. But, a lot of people, they just don't, and they watch, like movies that, people are getting their heads cut off, and like people, there's such trauma.
What is
How do you
that? What
I
is
don't
the
get
self?
that. I just don't get that, and but some people like detective movies. I'm going, well, great. I go every night. I mean, how about a little variety, you know? But it's just, when people tell me that, they go, what do you like to watch? What do you like to read?
Yeah.
And the other thing is, it's just like, what can you do, to be a better person? Because when
Yeah.
you're healthier, it's easier to be a better person.
Yeah.
And it's
I,
like,
that, I love that question. How can I be the best version of myself today?
yeah.
It's, yeah, because every day is different. Some days we're, you know, in the flow and full and everything is, we have lots to offer. And other days we don't. So that's okay. How can I be the best version of myself today with
Mhm.
work, right?
It's just like, and you could start out your day just asking yourself with like a couple simple questions. It's like, breathe, practice breathing. Breathing is a good thing, especially if you have a lot of stress in your life.
Yeah.
Three things that you're grateful for, three things that you have to do for yourself that day, mandatory that you have to do, three things that you have to do for your family, and three things you have to do for your career, you know, and then you got it like totally like handled,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
I find that setting that intention in the morning is such a powerful thing for me. If I can just kind of, put out what it is that I would like to create that day. Usually I have a pretty great day. And the days that I
We,
forget to set that intention, stuff's coming in from all over the place. And, it's kind of tends to be a little more hectic.
well, one thing I like is I learned from a teacher, he did 10 before 10, but I do 10, 9 before 10. And those are the three things. Each each section, those nine. What can I do? What do I need to do for myself today that's mandatory, non-negotiable? What three things do I have to do for my career? And what three things do I do for my family?
That's great.
you know and
Like
then
that.
it's just like, and choose after you do that, you can knock it off or do nine things that you have to do for your business and then get them done because it frees up your time. And then reduce the distractions, like don't answer emails till the end of the day. If you do them in the morning, just do it where you've got binaural beats going on in your ears and you just like bang it out, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I find that whole email computer stuff really rabbit holes me some days. It's just,
I use some text messaging, but I always give people my telephone number, like when I'm on a show, so that they can like text message me also, because I don't look at my emails that much anymore, unless and then when they tell me what they send me emails, you know, um, I will look at, it's just like the date, like the subject, the person, and the person's got to tell me what the subject is and what their email is so I can find it,
same
and
here. Oh my goodness, I love you.
and then at the end of my emails, it's just like when they get over 3,500, I will go to the very back of them. And there's some of them that I've saved from ages because I have, for some reason in my head, I'm going, I don't want to get rid of those yet. But I'll just put a check mark on the whole page and I'll uncheck what I don't want to give up. And then I hit delete. And I
Uh,
figured if anybody really needs to get a hold of me from that period of time, they'll email me again.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I gave so many solutions today. It's just
Uh,
like, you know,
I have a lot of people that are very unimpressed with me with my email attention because there's so many all the time, and some days I just can't take it. If somebody wants to get
you
a hold
can't
of me,
unsubscribe.
they need to text me.
Well, you can't unsubscribe. They say you're unsubscribed, but 4 months later, you're getting emails from them again. So it's just like, and then you can go like through the process of like, okay, I'll block them. And then, and it's so that it's like the one thing I don't even want to say it because I crossed my fingers, crossed all my fingers. It's like when you get things that people decided that you already bought for them, and it's a scam. It's just like, why kind of energy and putting that out in the universe because you're not going to get it back. And if you rip from that, I believe you deserve to lose it 5 times, not just like the same amount. I just think that there's a nicer way to do your life.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I have a hard time understanding, comprehending what it is that like I just don't understand where they're coming from at all. The whole,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah,
lie chain
we're
is
we don't have that
crazy.
experience, and it's just like it makes me a little bit sad when I hear somebody being taken advantage like that, because because I want to tell them, like, just say no.
Yeah.
It's okay to say no. You can say no.
Just say no. Absolutely.
Just
Yeah.
say no, and say yes to anything. Always say yes.
Yeah.
You can even say yes and then say no. It's just like always say yes. It's just like, and then you can say, like, is this physically harming me? And then say, I'd love to do that. It sounds like a really great idea, but I'm going to pass this time. And if they're going on to say, I think I already answered that question, and then smile and just, change the subject.
Yeah, and I think that it's almost like fear that we have, right, where we don't want to, let people down or say no. But it's actually very empowering when you do actually see what it is that's best for you.
Hmm.
It's
For sure.
yeah, it's definitely much healthier in our energy space. I know that
Hmm.
the whole people pleasing thing
I
is
do all day long when I'm dealing with patients. But I have limits. I only have, like, what is it that you would like me to focus on today with you? We
yeah,
have 15 minutes. What would you like me to focus on?
yeah,
And so, you have to have a leader in every group, and you have to have somebody, but the leader needs to be somebody who knows where they're going. It's just like, and have a good sense of direction,
yeah,
and just like, because you just don't want, it's just like, what they used to say about the old adage that men never ask for directions. you know it's just like, that's why women have such a hard time being in the co-pilot seat. I heard that one time. It just made me crack up laughing.
it's the truth though. It's very weird. It's a very weird thing, isn't it, that they don't.
Where's your girl? I had one of the work for me that couldn't tell direction very well. She was with me out in LA, and we ended up in a really bad area. And so I pulled into a McDonald's, and I left her in the car with the car running. I said, if I don't come back, I said, I go jump over and just drive, and when you go out here, turn left, because that will take you back towards, we were in LA for a conference. I think that'll take you back towards you know, uh, Beverly Hills. And she's going, are you serious? But she couldn't tell the direction. She had a horrible sense of direction,
Yeah.
and it's just like, I've never met anybody. She's the first woman ever I had thought had bad sense of direction. But
Okay. Well, now
anyway,
you've met
God
two.
bless her. She was a great best person. But it's been such a great time spending time with you and getting to know you a little
You
bit,
too.
better. And um,
Ask
and
Dr. Pat. I love that.
ask Dr.
Yeah.
Pat.
And your book is on.
Books on Amazon. It's Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired? And the latest edition is the one with all red letters. And
Right.
that's the one to focus on because it has other information in it.
Okay. Well, in the show notes, we'll have all of the ways that they can contact you. And I really appreciate you hanging out today, spending time with
Thank
me. You're
you.
awesome.
Hey, you're awesome too. I can't wait. Where do you live?
I live in White Rock, British Columbia. I'm just on the
Oh,
US border, actually.
never been there.
Oh,
It's just
it's
like,
the most beautiful place in Canada.
I want to take the train across country, either
Yeah.
fly out and take it back, or take it one way or the other, or drive. I think I want to fly out and then take the train back. Then you wouldn't have the time zone changes, you know,
Right.
then they're easier. Then you can ignore them.
What would that train be like, the Amtrak or
Yeah, it's Canadian Rail.
in real? Yeah, never been on a train, never been on a train ride before, but
They
yeah.
have like spacious windows, so that you can see the mountains, you know.
Yeah. Well, it would be a spectacular ride. I know that we were just in Whistler on the weekend and
Uh-huh.
people take the train up and through the mountains and the ocean. And oh my goodness, it'd be just like probably one of the most spectacular things you could do. It's so beautiful here.
Yeah. It's just like this is like have glacial also, and it doesn't have, and I'm in the mountains. I have this guy said, oh, it must be so much fun driving back roads. I said, not every day. I need a freeway. I need an expressway. I need a space where like drive and I can get, I can go 80 miles an hour. So,
Yes. Get where you're going.
on a straightaway, without, but it's great that the only traffic you have are deer, and you don't want to run into those guys very often.
No.
But it is pretty here. The lake here is 600 feet deep.
Ooh,
Less
I
than a
love
couple.
lakes. I'm a lake girl. Mountains and the lakes. I just, yeah.
Well, when I lived on, I grew up on like Lake Michigan and also
Okay.
on like Lake Erie and all the Great Lakes. And I can remember going in them all the time,
Yeah.
But here, so then I lived on the ocean. I went, oh my God, you can float without drowning.
Yeah.
But I didn't like the ocean because I couldn't see what I was swimming with.
Yeah. I'm scared of all in the ocean. I was actually watching Planet Earth or whatever, and it was in the ocean. I was like, it's a scary world down there. They're all fighting for their lives. Little crabs are jumping, trying to not get eaten from the
Well,
octopuses. And I was
you know,
like,
you
it's
think about,
crazy.
like
Like they're
the
at war.
giant octopuses. I mean, I love octopus to eat them, but
Yeah.
you think about like some of the how large shark, and they're hungry, so they're coming into shore, because like
Huge.
you have so much, islands of plastic that someone thought was a good idea to like dump out there without asking anybody.
Right.
They just did it. Anyway, that's another show.
That is an hour of a show.
But
We'll catch up again. We'll
we're going to
catch up
edit this,
again.
right?
We'll catch up down the road and we'll catch up down the road and we'll pick. I mean, you've got so much wisdom and share. And I know we
I
just
love it.
touched on kind of some of it today. So I really appreciate you.
And that. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. You can end it. All right, we'll see
The
you
rest of
later.
your day. Bye for
Thank
now.
you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thanks for hanging out and learning with me about how we can become the best version of ourselves. See you next time.